good evening. You're watching the Urban Debate. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. Our top story of the day today: unprecedented delays on IndiGo flights on the 2nd and 3rd of July, that is over the weekend, have stirred a debate on whether all is well within India's largest domestic airline. Passengers across India have faced a massive delay of IndiGo flights on 2 consecutive days. This was reportedly due to 900 out of the 1,600 cabin crew of the airlines calling in sick on the very same day. This, like I said, has sparked a debate now whether this can be a mere coincidence or there is more to it than what meets the eye. Yes, the IndiGo cabin crew on the 2nd of July applied for mass sick leave, hampering flight operations of the aircraft across the country. Reportedly, 2nd July was also the day on which Air India had called for recruitment of cabin crew. However, sources say that Air India has denied conducting any such recruitment drive on that particular day. The reported on-time performance of other carriers for the day was something like this. SpiceJet reported 80.4% on-time performance. Go First and Air Asia India reported 88%, as you can see there on your screens. The figures coming to you there on your screens. 92.3% for Vistara, and Air India reported 86.3% and 77.1%. So those are the figures. Meanwhile, IndiGo's on-time performance reported on the 2nd of July was 45.2%, as you can see, largely a huge percentage less than the other airlines, and less than half of its flights departed within 15 minutes of their scheduled departure time. The aviation regulator DGCA has now taken note of the delay and has sought a report from IndiGo. So let's ask tonight our experts on the panel and understand what caused this kind of a massive delay. And is there a coincidence, or is there something that we need to know about how so many of them reported sick on the same day? But before that, let's also listen in to my colleague Madhav's report and a few citizen voices.
Well, one thing is very clear. IndiGo is the biggest airline in the country, domestically speaking, at the moment, and that's why this is a very, very big story. Because if there are hundreds of flights of IndiGo getting delayed for apparently crew not turning up on time, some of them calling sick, or whether you could choose to call it mass casual leave, or whatever it may be the case, for the airline to certainly come out and explain what has happened. Now, we had seen some reports coming out yesterday that this was due to a recruitment drive or interviews that were conducted by Air India. Now, sources and Air India has come out and very clearly denied that there were any such interviews that were held either for cabin crew or for staff of other categories. And in such a situation, therefore, the question that arises is that what is the reason for all of these staff not reporting to work or reporting late to work? Is there a particular pattern in this? And can the airline come out and make it stand clear? What is of great concern is the fact that for an airline that prides itself on having almost 100% on-time performance, the on-time performance of IndiGo even yesterday was only 71%, and this is as far as the official figures of the Ministry of Civil Aviation are concerned. So the second successive day that there has been a problem, and what really is the reason for this? Now, the aviation regulator, the DGCA, which looks into not just the safety aspects but also the health and the operational aspects of the airlines, has sought a report from IndiGo on this. To the latest information that we have, that report was still awaited. Sources in the DGCA had said that no information had yet come from the airline on that particular aspect, which leaves one to also ask a question as to why for the past 3 days IndiGo has officially been silent on it. Why has there been no official statement issued? Do the passengers, do the regulator, do the Ministry of Civil Aviation and even the shareholders of IndiGo not have a right to know what exactly is happening within the airline, given the fact that IndiGo also happens to be a listed company? So these are some very, very important questions at this point of time, and clearly, of course, whether even if there are issues within the airline, can such issues really be brushed under the carpet rather than addressing issues and addressing problems that the staff or the cabin crew may be facing? What really is going on inside the airline is perhaps something that only IndiGo can tell us through a formally issued statement in the next few days.
जो कल इंडिगो के फ्लाइट सब जो डिले हुए हैं, तो मेरा क्रूज मेंबर और उनके स्टाफ से एक ही रिक्वेस्ट कि नॉट द कॉस्ट ऑफ द पैसेंजर, बिकॉज ऑफ दिस ऑल बेयर बाय द कॉस्ट टू द पैसेंजर्स. उनका टाइम वैल्यू है और कोई ना कोई अपने पर्सनल प्रॉब्लम के हिसाब से या कोई की प्रॉब्लम जाना चाहता है बाय क्विक बाय योर फैसिलिटीज़, और वही अगर आप डिस्टर्ब करेंगे तो इट विल बी very much difficult for the passenger.
ऐसे स्टाफ में इंडिगो स्टाफ ने कुछ एक्शन नहीं उठाया था इस पर, बिकॉज आई थिंक इंडिगो का स्टाफ शुड बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल, बिकॉज वो अथॉरिटी ले रहे हैं इतने सारे पैसेंजर्स, दे शुड बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल.
मैनेजमेंट बराबर करना चाहिए. पब्लिक को कितना तकलीफ होता है उसका वो नहीं, वो रिटर्न तो करते नहीं वो लोग. उसका बेनिफिट थोड़ी हम लोग को बराबर है ना. उसका जो पैसा गया वो कौन देगा? वो लोग देने के लिए कितना टाइम लगाते, बाद में सर्विस भी बराबर देते नहीं, फिर वो कारण बता के वो लोग ये करते.
वो एयर इंडिया की जो इंटरव्यूज थे उसकी वजह से वो हुआ, और वो एक ही दिन का प्रॉब्लम था, वो हमेशा का प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं रहने वाला है. तो आगे देखते हैं क्या होता है.
दे शुड ट्राई टू रिजॉल्व द इशू जो भी है. अगर सैलरी हाइक का मैंने हेडलाइन रीड किया था तो वो है तो उनको करना चाहिए, क्योंकि मैंने ये भी रीड किया था कि काफ़ी टाइम से उनको सैलरी का इंक्रीमेंट नहीं मिला है. सो दैट इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम, क्योंकि होना तो चाहिए. प्लस यू नो इन्फ्लेशन है, महंगाई है, सब बढ़ रहा है, तो सैलरी भी एवरी ईयर एनुअली एटलीस्ट सम परसेंटेज बढ़ना चाहिए.
हाँ, जब हमारा कैंसिल हो जाता है जब फ्लाइट का, तो बड़ा मुश्किल होता है हमको. वी हैव टू रन फ्रॉम पिलर टू पोस्ट एंड नोबडी आंसर्स प्रॉपर्ली, नोबडी डायरेक्ट्स यू प्रॉपर्ली. So it is very uncomfortable.
I was traveling to Dubai and I had a connecting flight, Delhi, Jaipur and then Dubai. So my connecting flight got cancelled, the Jaipur one, and then my Dubai flight obviously got delayed. So I was not able to board the flight only. My whole one day of the trip got wasted. I have paid for the hotels and everything. All my money got wasted. So I think yes, it is a very big problem and the airlines should definitely look into this matter very strictly.
Joining us this evening, Dr. Sanat Kaul, former Civil Aviation Joint Secretary of Government of India, Dr. Y.N. Sharma, CEO of Kimes Aviation, Sarosh Damania, Aviation Lawyer, and Air Commodore B.S. Sivaj, DG Aviation Safety Management Society of India. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here on the program. I want to begin by asking you, Dr. Kaul, that, the fact of the matter is the biggest brunt is faced by the passengers. Their time is completely taken for granted. The flight delays obviously cumulatively would add up to a huge loss. Time is money, isn't it? But it seems that there is a sense of mismanagement within the airlines. Would you say something like this should have been managed better rather than causing these massive delays over the weekend and inconveniencing so many passengers in one go?
Definitely. The consumer convenience is not a major issue with the government. They should have it more. DGCA is over-occupied with safety issues, with other issues. It doesn't have that kind of staff. I have been advocating an ombudsman for the civil aviation sector. They must have, and that is the only way you can meet consumer grievances. These are small grievances, they have to be looked at. But then talking in general about the other issues which have been raised, I would like to say that, you can categorize them into three categories. One is bird hit. Now, bird hit is an issue which airport authority is in a way responsible. They have to make sure that the birds around the airport are not there or are minimal, and there are methods of doing it, especially regarding clearance of garbage around it. The second issue is about decompression that took place in one of the flights, which I think is a very serious issue. It should not happen. It also calls for looking into the maintenance. The third issue is the absentee, sudden crew absentee, which is, well, as reported in the papers, it's because the Air India was having a recruitment drive and a large number of crew of IndiGo went to that thing. Whether it's correct or not, I don't know. But that's an HR issue, and they have to look into it to make sure that why suddenly all these crew suddenly took leave. It's not correct. It should not happen again. And they should compensate. But the main thing is that the consumer redressal system is not there, and therefore airlines get away by not giving enough advantage or in looking after the customers, the passengers who are left pending for themselves. It's a very wrong thing. Countries like European Union have moved forward much more. They are very progressive. They take care of their passengers. There are rules and regulations regarding it, and they are very strict about it. And therefore, we have to look into their ways and maybe some other countries where passenger comfort, passenger safety, and passenger grievances are resolved very properly.
Yes, when something like this happened, Dr. Kaul, the passengers, like you said, are left to fend for themselves. They're helpless and there's no redressal at all. I mean, if you talk to the flyers who probably missed appointments, who probably got delayed, their schedules have got derailed, no one seems to care. And that presents a very sorry picture of the entire aviation sector in a country like ours. This is the largest domestic airline we are talking about. Mr. Y.N. Sharma, the fact of the matter is, if you go by the sequence of recent events, SpiceJet, of course, had number of these instances, which Dr. Kaul also mentioned, which means that one low-cost affordable airline already fighting for its credibility or whatever, it's losing credibility because of the alarming regularity with which incidents are happening with SpiceJet. IndiGo was the other airline, the preferred airline for a lot of those who travel low cost. Now, even here, if there is this kind of a delay, where does the common man go to? Everybody cannot afford the high premium airlines.
2 points here, ma'am. First, the issue of so many flights getting delayed. You had put up some data at the beginning of the program in which you said over the last 2 days how much the on-time performances got affected.
Yes.
I think a pertinent way of looking at it probably is if one looks at what is the track record of that airline. That what is their normal batting average on on-time performance. You can't judge an airline by taking 2 days data. You have to look at it on a larger time frame, 15 days, 1 month, and then this, if honestly for any business to run, your human capital, if more than 50% of them decide on taking mass casual, they report sick. Okay, what does an organization do in a situation like that? Normally, when you have a mass sick leave happening, it is invariably industrial action, which normally is there. This is their way of protesting if they're not happy with the management. But in that case, normally the message goes out. Everybody goes on sick leave, but they are at pains explaining it to the world that, look, we guys are doing this because we are unhappy. No such comment has come from the employees as such. Yes, probably there was an opportunity for a walk-in interview somewhere and all of them decided to go.
The comment may not have come from employees, Mr. Sharma, but if I may point out here that IndiGo pilots saw a 28% salary cut. Their flying allowances have been halved in April. IndiGo crew's dissatisfaction with, is kind of linked, isn't it, with the company's losses. So was it totally, not expected that something like this was waiting to happen, that there could be, today there is a mass leave, tomorrow there could be mass resignations? How do we prevent that?
Of course. And see, but having said that, any airline realizes that human capital that they have is one of their most precious assets. And they are, they make more effort than normal at trying to safeguard their human capital. IndiGo, I'm sure, is no exception to that rule. They'd also be doing that, considering they're, in fact, more than half the capacity in this country is actually IndiGo, if you talk about commercial flying. Now, as I said, that, if there is a cut in salary, whatever, this business is, as it is, a business which runs on very, very thin margins. That's the reason you find even a small spike in ATF normally causes the whole airline to go under. And then you have other problems. Okay, we've seen it happen before. We've seen 2 airlines fold up in this country. Okay, not in the in the recent past, and we definitely don't want something like that happening. And as I said, for a person to decide, if he hears there's an interview happening somewhere, he decides to take sick leave. What can you do about it?
But don't you agree that this is a matter of trust? And how can someone even squander the trust that the consumers have reposed in you? Shouldn't you be guarding it with all your might? Because once that is breached, it would take many years to regain. Once,
there's a lot of people feeling very hurt sitting in the IndiGo management also if half their staff goes on sick leave.
I want to bring in another point here. Yes. Hold on. Mr. Rosh Damania, I want to bring in this other point about what can the DGCA do in something like this. Tomorrow, if there's a mass resignation, it seems from what we saw already with the mass leave, it seems the airline will just come down to its knees overnight.
DGCA now having an inquiry being conducted is already showing a proactive approach. Now, for passenger grievances, that passengers who are suffering because of whatever the mismanagement the company, say, or the crew taking mass leave, whatever may be the reason. Today, if I book a ticket in IndiGo, I am booking it on their brand name.
Yes.
I don't know who's the pilot flying, who's the crew, who's going to be there. I expect my flight to be on time because I've paid for it. Now, it is not only about services what you pay for are the flight services, you also pay for other things such as the flight being on time, it being flying on schedule. Now, a lot of airlines, including IndiGo, pride themselves being an on-time airline. And instead of there the announcement always in flight, instead of the Indians, they call it the IndiGo standard time. But
Yes.
now, unfortunately, what we are seeing today is a very sorry state of scenario. They need to get their house in order. And apart from that, passengers being concerned now today, what can a passenger do if he is affected by a delayed flight? Now, of course, there are a lot of mechanisms, but DGCA also has brought in something called as a passenger charter, which has recently come out. So the passenger charter, there are rights of passengers stated, including rights that how the passengers are supposed to be compensated if there is a delay in flight, if the if the connecting flight is cancelled. What is the compensation to be paid? If the flight is delayed for around 2 hours, then there has to be free food which has to be given to the passengers waiting in the terminal. If the flight is cancelled for 20 and rescheduled within 24 hours, there has to be a free hotel booking done and hotel accommodation has to be given out to all the passengers. So there are a lot of things. Rules exist. Rules are in place. Law is in place in India. There is, for convenience purpose, DGCA also has come out with something called a passenger charter, which is of course very handy document. A person doesn't have to read the law for that. That's a very simple document which they've come out for the common man or the consumer. But
okay.
Of course,
that's important information for our viewers, that if you haven't had a look at the passenger charter of the DGCA, you must. There must be something in there for you on how you can protect yourself or how you can actually demand accountability from the airline. Mr. Damania, also tell us that, you were saying that here, in this case, of course, we find, at least in what happened over the weekend, there was nothing that the passengers could do. They had to deal with it. But are you saying that there is a provision in this particular charter where even in this case and even now, the affected passengers could have some recourse to, to address their grievances?
Of course, as per the passenger now, of course, to be eligible for that what is the delay or the time delay is important.
Okay.
The minimum delay which is required for a compensation is a 2-hour delay. Something less than 2 hours, they might not be eligible for compensation. But if the flight has been delayed for 2 hours or more, they are eligible for the compensation. So if you go through the passenger charter, everything is given in detail and it's very simple approach. A layman can read it. There's nothing complicated about it. And apart from that also, DGCA also has their own portal for complaints. It's called the Air Suvidha portal. That is also, of course, a person doesn't have to go to court, maybe fight a case or something to get the complaint. You can it's an online portal available. You can file an online complaint and the DGCA will look into your matter regarding any compensations or claim which you may have against the airline.
Okay. Air Commodore B.S. Sibach, in terms of how we are only, of course, concerned about how the passengers can be protected from something like this. We do understand there are certain days where these kind of coincidences happen. Of course, in this case, we are not entirely sure whether it was because of the Air India recruitment drive that bulk of the employees had to go for that. We are not confirming that. But at the same time, how do we ensure that something like this doesn't inconvenience passengers to this extent? And IndiGo, for that matter, used to pride itself for its punctuality. That, it seems, has taken a huge beating.
Very true. IndiGo Airlines is the largest airline, and it was the most efficiently run airline with best on-time performance in the country. But unfortunately, after the COVID, most of the airlines around the world have been crippled. And because of that, they had to impose certain pay and cuts and the allowances reduction. which was, of course, not liked by the pilots. But subsequently, the airlines should have, once the COVID was over, and airline had started making some profits. But once again, the Russian and Ukraine conflict, due to which the ATF prices have gone up, and our exchange rate of dollar to rupee has imposed another heavy burden on the airlines. And IndiGo has suffered massive losses, almost 1,700 crores in the last quarter, ending March, though in between it had made a small profit. But then now the passengers' capacity has increased and the occupancy has increased, and the airline must, give some relief to the pilots, cabin crew, and other engineers, because this has a very, major impact on safety due to the low morale and motivation level.
Okay.
A 900 odd cabin crew going on a, mass sick leave is something unheard and unprecedented. And the amount of, inconvenience has been caused to the passengers, loss of faith to the airline, and of course, the reputation of the airline as such.
Yes.
This most responsible act which should have never been resorted, and the DGCA had to formulate such rules on such occasions when a very, very strict action should be taken against those defaulters. And there is no dearth of people in this country who can fill the slots in the airlines, or there are so many cabin crew are unemployed in the other airlines. So this is not to be done. This is kind of blackmail, and this is not at all acceptable. There should be zero tolerance, because so much of inconvenience is caused to the public.
Yes, that is true. Air Commodore B.S. Savage, you made an important point when you, in your opening comment, where you said that we must also cut them some slack because they are recovering from a pandemic. IndiGo, if I may tell our viewers, is the only profitable airline before the pandemic. The aviation sector undoubtedly was the worst hit during the lockdown across the world. Dr. Sanat Kaul, do you agree? Now let's look at the larger picture here with the sector in general. Is still limping back to normalcy, you feel, and there is a need to sort of give certain concessions? Does that apply to a case like this, Dr. Kaul?
Yes, it does. The taxation issue on airline is retrograde. It is neither helping the airlines in their profitability, because the fuel prices are so high that they take away nearly 50% of the cost. In addition, there is no exercise at all done here that if they reduce the prices of air traffic, air fuel, and they make sure that the airlines also reduce the tariff, the gain in the number of passengers will offset the loss of revenue. I am a firm believer that there should be an exercise to see how they can attract more and more passengers from, say, two-tier railways, which in any case run perhaps at a loss to help the passengers. Their main job is to bring cargo, to take cargo up and down. So for long distance, I think it's time that there should be an evaluation of, by reducing tax on ATF, on aviation and passengers, there will be no loss, but a subsequent increase in revenue for the government. They are killing the airline systems, not killing, but at least reducing their profitability and that in retrospect or in prospect, it is saying it is bringing down their quality of service, quality of safety, and everything. Therefore, there is a need in the long term for a macro study of the transport system in India and how airlines are being overtaxed and railways and buses are not, in fact, are less taxed. There need to have more taxation on them and reduce taxation on airline, bring more passengers into airline, which creates a much greater efficiency for the whole economy
Talking about efficiency, Dr. Kaul, and I want to bring in YN Sharma here. Don't you think it should have only enhanced with the new players coming in? Air India is now recruiting. Isn't that a good thing for the sector in general? That, business is expanding. There is Akasha Air also in the pipeline. So shouldn't it have been that there should have been greater competition? There should have been better, resources employed? Overall for the sector, is that an indicator of growth? Isn't that an indicator of growth for the aviation sector?
This is just the point that, when across the complete economy, people are talking doom and gloom, and aviation is looking at people who are willing to invest money. There are 2 airlines coming up. So it augurs very well for optimism that people have on the aviation sector. People are willing to back it, that yes, aviation sector will see growth. Now, along with that, the problem which is going to happen, and definitely we'll see that in about a year, at best a year and a half, is that in capital, you have only those many pilots, you have only those many cabin crews, and we've seen it historically that they find it easier to poach from already existing airline, and it's so much more easier to do that by giving a few rupees more to poach a already trained person instead of investing in a fresh person and having that person ready. Even for a cabin crew, the time of training is roughly 5 to 6 months before they come anywhere near being fully operational. And here you have group of people who are already trained. So, so going down for a year and a half down the road, I see a serious shortage on human resources across all sectors, whether it's pilots, whether it's cabin crews, whether it's engineers, whether it is ground staff. There is going to be a major shortage. That is what will affect the operations more than anything else, because you would not have enough people to fly your aircraft and to man. That is going to happen.
That is likely to happen. But on the other side, Sarosh Damania, the fact that one particular airline, let's assume for a moment that, Air India did have a recruitment drive, though the airline is denying it. Can the DGCA intervene or should be monitoring such things, that if you indeed have a recruitment drive on a day like this, and if bulk of the people are applying here, it will disrupt other flight operations. Can there be any regulation to avert such a thing from happening in future?
DGCA, which is a body which is controlling the airlines, the DGCA doesn't have any say when it comes to a personal choice of an individual crew member. Now, a crew member, of course, mass calling in sick is a wrong thing. But every crew member has a right to take a sick leave. And apart from that, there is no rule that they cannot now. Of course, every employment contracts are governed. They might have that if they have to resign, they have to maybe give a 30 days notice. But that doesn't stop them for going to better opportunities or going for interviews in some other airline. So there is nothing illegal in which they have done. Of course, from a company point of view, from an HR point of view, this was a very negative impact which the company is facing today, because the company was not maybe able to keep their crews enough happy, or maybe not pay enough. Now, everybody in life is looking for a better opportunity. If a trained person has, now if you also see, Air India also recently has placed an order for 200 A320s, which are the same aircraft the IndiGo flies.
Yes.
So of course they may be looking for people who are trained in the same aircraft. So they might be not directly wanting to poach IndiGo, but they are putting out an advertisement in general that is for all existing crew members or new freshers who want to join can come across for interviews. They also had a voluntary retirement scheme that was in place. So more than 1,600 of Air India's staff have retired voluntarily.
My concern is, Sarosh Damania, that there could be more of such things happening. Then if you have, like you said, 2 new airlines coming up, there is Jet Airways 2.0, there would be more recruitment drives. We do not want that time and again passengers have to be derailed and their interest compromised. Air Commodore B.S. Sivach, what is the solution then? How do we avert something like this?
I told you, solution is discipline. Rules, regulations we do not permit this kind of, mass leave. And if there is any such occasion, then there should be some advance notice, advance planning. You can't just suddenly go on mass schedule leave and disrupt the entire flight and cause so much of, problems for so many people around the country. So it's very unfortunate, very poor, it shows very poor state of discipline of the employees. And of course, the employees also, to a certain extent, they may be sort of, we need to be sympathetic toward them also, because if they're paid which were directed, allowances which were directed, if they are not restored, and the company has started making profits, of course, the fuel price and the exchange rate of dollar rupee, they have further created maybe problem for the airline to look in towards improving the salary structure. So this is the serious problem which has impacted, and the sufferers have been the passengers, and of course the airline reputation has gone for a
Yes, absolutely.
toss.
Airline reputation has taken a beating, no doubt about that. Loss of face for IndiGo Airline. Not just that, the shares have fallen, as reported earlier today, 4% shares of IndiGo. DGCA is now asking for a clarification. The airline needs to get its act together for inconveniencing.
May I put in a word?
Sure,
Yeah.
go ahead, sir.
The only silver lining that you can probably see in this is that it says a lot for the brand equity of the promoter of Air India now, Tata's. That so many people working in an established airline want to go and work in that place. So it augurs well for the aviation industry that you have reputed companies which are now investing in the airline business and coming. We expect so much more. And if one was to talk from the passenger side, once Akasa comes in Air India comes in, so many aircrafts come in which fly here. The good part for the passenger, which is going to be, is that the market is going to get competitive. The fares also would probably get more rationalized, and you'll have, some kind of a competition happening between airlines to be competitive, and the pricing will come down on air tickets. That would happen, and there will be more connectivity across India. That is to be expected when so many aircraft start flying in India. So that way, that augurs well for the industry. But having said that, when something like this happens for an established airline, on a 2-day mass sick leave, if they start taking a hit on their share prices, it really doesn't, it's
right.
unfair.
But this is a sector that's recovering, that is struggling to grow.
Exactly.
Some good, some bad. But yes, mass bunking has got to do with salary discontentment among cabin crew. Some of those issues have to be addressed because it's directly connected to the citizen, to the flyers. And therefore, yes, this is not something that the DGCA can ignore. Let's see what IndiGo says in its response to the notice that it has been served. I'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Dr. Sanat Kaul, Wayan Sharma, Sarosh Damania, and Air Commodore B.S. Sivaj. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's take a short break here. News and updates continue. On the other side, stay with the Urban Debate.